Hey, everybody, it's Tommy Canale, and welcome back to Before the Lights podcast, the show that tells you how they made their mark. He's a former professional baseball player that became the mastermind that engineered one of the biggest sports memorabilia frauds of all time called Operation Stolen Base. He's the founder of Icon clothing brand. Let's welcome in Cliff Panezich. Cliff, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me. How's it going?
It is going well. Once again, I'm here at what's become my regular place here at Dom DeMarco's 9785 West Charleston Boulevard here in Las Vegas, Nevada. If you haven't been here, please come here. Check the show notes to go to domdemarcos.com. Come here, check out my buddy Albert's Pizza. It is fantastic. It is from Brooklyn, but you grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, attended the NAIA School of Martin Methodist College in Tennessee. When did you start playing baseball? As a kid?
So my baseball story is pretty much your stereotypical, started at 5 years old. I was a pitcher, shortstop, baseball ran very much through and through in my family. My father was a baseball player. My brother was a baseball player. I started at 5, and I'm your typical pitcher, shortstop, all-star, league championships, all that. And then, obviously I went into high school. I went to Youngstown Ursuline High School. I actually went to a junior college before that in Erie, Pennsylvania, and then really where I started to find myself and my success in my career, as you mentioned, was at Martin Methodist, yes.
And then from there, you were a catcher that played for Sussex Skyhawks in the Independent Canadian American Association, making $1,000 a month.
It's actually $800 a month. So.
Okay, let's start there.
Yeah.
How do you survive on $800 a month?
Yeah, you don't. So, the story goes back to, we started at Martin Methodist. I really had a very successful senior season. I was third in the country in home runs, hit 21 home runs. My advisor, my coach, we kind of all expected to get drafted, go into affiliated ball. Kind of went by the wayside, had to go through some free agent workouts. And actually, part of the story is how I got signed and got into professional baseball at all, which was a free agent workout in Detroit, kind of last straw back against the wall. This is the last free agent workout for the 2008 season. And we have 200 position players there, and it's every big school, every kid that didn't get drafted. This is their last chance. 200 position players. 2 of us got contracts. So you can do the math. The last 1%. Back against the wall, and they sent me to Sussex, New Jersey for the Sussex Skyhawks. And that's where I really learned how much professional baseball is a business. It's absolutely a business. I got there allegedly to become the starting catcher. That was definitely never in the cards. The Can-Am League is a league. There's a lot of guys that have already played affiliated ball, a lot of guys with major league experience. And they're at the tail end of their career trying to make some money in the summer. And there's guys on the roster, if they had major league experience, they were making $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month. And just as you see at the highest levels, man, the guys that are making money are going out on the field, whether they're performing, whether they're getting outperformed by someone on the bench, it doesn't matter. And that's kind of the realm I fell into, was behind a catcher that had some major league experience, was at the tail end of his career, not playing really well, and I was probably an arrogant, cocky, upset 22-year-old kid that was like, why am I not getting on the field, and why am I not making any money? And it's a struggle. All the lower levels of professional baseball are a struggle.
2 partial tears in your rotor cuff and 1 in your labrum. Surgery put you out a couple years. But at that point in time, were you still thinking, I'm going to come back and play baseball, or were you looking other places before you got into anything we're going to talk about?
No. So, when I get diagnosed with, the fact that I need the surgery, and I went to a very good surgeon in the Cleveland Clinic, obviously in Cleveland, Ohio. And he pretty much convinces me, like, hey, you're going to come back at worst 95% strength. So I'm like, yeah, sign me up. And, looking back, that's one of the regrets I have in my career, and in hindsight, and this would probably sound crazy to someone who's not an athlete, but it's very much the play till the wheels fall off. I would have rather not had the surgery, kept injecting myself with cortisone, kept getting the shots, because at that point in time, I already had 2 cortisone shots, but that was buried in some medical records in some podunk city in Tennessee that nobody knew about, no major league team knew about. And I really would have rather just played on cortisone till, my arm fell off and then deal with it. Because after the surgery, I came back, and it was, a very mentally straining process. The surgery's obviously changed nowadays. It's a little bit quicker, but it took me about 18 months between when we had the surgery, full rehab, throwing program, and it just never comes back. I lost about 10 miles an hour. Now I got a surgery on my medical record. Now going on 24, 25 years old, and that's pretty much the end of it. Now I'm too old with a medical record, and I'm not the same player I am, which sounds great. I'm sure it sounds crazy to some of your listeners, but I had a scout, the highest scout in the Indians organization, the Guardians. Private one-on-one worked out for him, and I'm just looking for advice. What do I need to do to get back in? And he bluntly told me, he's like, nothing. He's like, you're a professional player, but you're 25 with a shoulder surgery. I can't sign you. And that's the reality of professional baseball.
We're going to get into Operation Stolen Base, but before we get to that, you had a legit autograph business on eBay called Athletic Connection Sports Memorabilia. You collected autographs from Alabama football players Marquise Johnson, Rod Woodson, Colin Peake, and Terrence Cody. Did you offer or did you pay these guys? How are you getting these autographs legitimately?
So it really starts years before that. So that was the transition into Operation Stolen Base. That was kind of the catalyst. So that was 2010. The legitimate business ran pretty much through my entire collegiate career, through my entire professional career. So again, like you mentioned, I was making $800 a month. What people don't understand is that's $800 a month during the season. So now I go into the off season and, not only do I got to put the time in if I want to progress in my career. And obviously I had the surgery, which kind of puts you on the shelf of doing anything. I'm in a sling and immobile. And, but I had trainers and hitting instructors and a gym and and my baseball hitting facility, and that all cost money. And what ended up happening is I started this legitimate business, which was hustling autographs on the side, on the weekend. And it was, as you mentioned, paying a lot of players. So this is before the days of the name, image, likeness deal where they could take money for things like that.
And at that time, that's against NCAA rules.
Absolutely. So funny is because the documentary just came out recently after the fact, the Johnny Manziel Untold story. Well, I knew that story 8 years ago because I had money in that signing. So I knew exactly how much he got paid for what he signed, where it happened, which was in Miami. I knew the guys that ran it, and I received a bunch of the memorabilia for it. But going all the way back, so 2009, 2010, me and a couple associates, we had, paid Johnny Manziel, guys from Penn State, guys from Ohio State. And really, while we're out there hustling autographs, getting autographs to sell, it made it a lot easier if these kids were just like, and when I say kids, I'm in the same situation as them.
Sure.
We're the same age. I'm pursuing a professional career, and you just level with them like, hey, we don't want one autograph. I need about 50. Let me just pay you for it. And a lot of them would take the money. And the sad part of it is, and you mentioned the Alabama situation, a lot of these kids that were paying $20, $50 handshakes, they're like, hey, I can go get a pizza tonight, or I can take my girlfriend to the movies, and it's little stuff like that. And, with the NCAA regulations at that time that, could have made them ineligible. And that was actually, that year was the start of the Nick Saban dynasty. That was a huge deal. That was their first championship, really. And, technically speaking, they could have all been ineligible.
And you're right. I mean, we're talking about heavy hitting names. We're not talking about just guys on a roster. We're talking some of the big stars on the Alabama football roster that you're selling legitimately, but these guys are getting paid illegitimately to sign their autographs.
Right. I mean, we can go back further from just the Alabama story. And obviously I mentioned Johnny Manziel, but some of the Ohio State players that were taking money are, Terrell Pryor, DeVere Posey, the starting quarterback at Penn State. No one, which is funny to me because no one's really connected the dots, and I haven't put this story out there a whole lot, and only because the nature of the environment has changed. Will I talk about it now? But I graduated high school with and was friends of the starting quarterback at Penn State, Darryl Clark. And they were ranked top 5 at the time. And, it's funny when I tell people off record about the story. Me paying him for autographs kind of took on the scene of like a drug deal, which is crazy. But I met him in a parking lot. I knew he needed some money. Obviously, his autograph at that time was valuable. I met him in a parking lot. We went for a drive. We're at a red light. I slide him an envelope across the center console. He doesn't even count it. He just puts it in his pocket. Go back to the parking lot. He signs all these autographs. It looks like a drug deal, but I'm really just paying him for touching a Sharpie to a photograph, a mini helmet, football, whatever. But yeah, there were plenty of guys that took money. And, like I said, at that time, Penn State was top 5. Ohio State was top 5. Alabama won the championship. These guys are technically, as illogical as it is, they could have been ruled ineligible. And that's just the NCAA kind of nonsense behind it. Because there's no way these guys, Daryl needed money to get his car out of the shop and needed repairs. Like that should never happen when you're playing in front of 110,000 fans on a Saturday.
So Cliff, how does it go from a legitimate business to the idea of forging signatures?
And that's really where it starts with the Alabama situation. So we're down in Alabama. This is December 2009, Christmas break. And as you mentioned, Marquise Johnson's kind of the first guy we ran into. Paid him, paid all the other players, but there were key players on the team that, we couldn't find, we couldn't get. They wouldn't cooperate, whatever it may be. Julio Jones, Mark Ingram, Rolando McClain. And we're in Tuscaloosa, Christmas time, middle of nowhere. Nobody wants to be in Tuscaloosa in December.
Yeah.
Nobody around, nothing to do. And it's actually an associate of mine, Adam Bollinger, who's like, I want to stay because I'm on the business side of it. I'm trying to make my money, recoup my investment, all this. And he's like, well, what if I just sign him and we leave? And I'm like, we've been here 7 days. Fine with me. Let's do it. So it really starts with him, who's somebody that's never been implicated. Everyone thinks it started with me. It started with him, and the whole operation was kind of devised on the way back from Alabama, driving back to Ohio. And it started, with an account. He was signing the autographs. I was selling them. We were splitting the money. That's early 2010. And then, from there, it just snowballs. And spirals. So, I always tell a story. 2010 is very much still mostly authentic memorabilia, some forgeries. So like at that point in time, how it operated, for instance, was I went down to Miami for the Super Bowl in 2010. Not the game itself, but I'm just there, kind of like the situation here in town now.
Yeah, in Vegas.
Media row and all the interviews.
Sure.
And the Pro Bowl was there at the time. And it would be a situation like, Adrian Peterson signing a jersey. And do I want to get my item signed? Absolutely. I'm more concerned with taking pictures of him signing a jersey, a mini helmet, a football, a photo. Because once I have the picture of him signing it, I'm just reproducing forgeries. And
was he the first person that you forged then?
Geez. So if I had to guess, my recollection is the first players I forged were the Kentucky basketball team.
Okay.
Before I went to Miami, which at that time was a big deal. It was John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Eric Bledsoe, and Daniel Orton. I think they had 4 first-round picks out of the starting 5. And the John Wall signature was like chicken scratch and worth $100 a photo. And that's really where it started for me. But, when I tell the story at the onset, it was very much, practice 30, 40, 50 times to sign one forgery. By the tail end, and as we're sitting here right now, I could put down probably 300 signatures on a piece of paper that a normal lay person not in the industry would think they look authentic.
Just right off the top of your head, you could do it.
Off the top of my head,
So,
at least 200.
At that time, was it taking you 30, 40 tries, or would it take you more to master a signature? Were there some that were harder than others, I take it?
I mean, yeah, there's obviously... we could get into what makes a signature difficult. And there's guys throughout the entire operation that I avoided. Derek Jeter, Ichiro, Ken Griffey Jr. It just wasn't worth the hassle, right? But yeah, on the front end, it was, sit there with pieces of paper and practice, produce one. By the time, I made a joke, I think in Sports Illustrated, that there was a point in time I felt like I probably signed LeBron's name more than he signed his name. And there's a story in the Sports Illustrated where while I'm talking to investigators, through the 2-bit advice of my idiot attorney, because supposedly we had a deal, and that kind of, part of the legal system, the deal falls through and they renege on it. But the prosecutor, Marty Desmond, kind of comes to the table and is like, I want to see how good you are, sign LeBron's name. And they're kind of expecting me to be like, yeah, show me a picture, whatever. And I ask him, Cavs or Heat? He says, do both. And they give me a piece of paper. I do both. And they're like, looks good.
So then let me ask you this. How long did it take some of your forgeries to actually be authenticated by other major organizations?
There's so many out there. And like a funny story is actually, if you're familiar with Nellis Auctions out there in Nevada, in Las Vegas, they ran an estate sale selling autographs that were all forgeries.
Of yours?
And I'm scrolling through them and I'm like, oh, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine.
How can you tell it was yours and not the real person? You just know you signed it?
I just know. So part of the how I can figure it out are, what photograph I used, what certificate of authenticity I created to go with it. But I also know kind of where I signed photos, in what color. So there's a lot of tips and tricks, but I know for a fact they were selling my forgeries, and I actually bought a couple of them back.
You bought your own forgeries
I bought my own forgeries back for way more than I sold them for sure. But just to have, I make content out of it and everything. But so there's, the story you're probably referring to though is, I did a in-person home authentication with JSA, James Spence Authentication, which allegedly would be one of the leaders in the autograph industry, right up there with PSA. And they came to my house, me and an associate of mine, and there are probably 2,000-3,000 autographs getting authenticated. Half probably real, half probably fake, roughly somewhere in there. And they turned down 2 autographs that they said were fake. One of those 2 was 100% authentic because I got it signed. I watched it signed. It was a Lamar Woodley football from a linebacker for the Steelers. It was 100% authentic, and that's one of the ones they turned down. Everything else, they just passed. To the point of where they authenticate signatures off of their exemplar database, and they took pictures of my autographs and added them to their exemplars to then authenticate other autographs. So to this day, there's probably pictures of my signatures in their database that they're using for players, which is mind-boggling. And they just kind of operate behind a veil of secrecy, saying it's their opinion. And, really that's part of the problem with the whole industry.
The sports memorabilia business is big money. I mean, there's no secret about that. So at the height of it, what kind of money were you bringing in on a monthly basis?
I'm doing, me personally, and now obviously we'll get into it, and there's a lot of people involved and the whole big trickle-down effect here. But me personally, I'm making anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 a month.
And you're living large.
If you could imagine, I'm living beyond my means even.
So you were here in Vegas. Are you hitting clubs? Are you hitting gambling? Are you hitting every high thing that there is to do in town?
I'm doing every crazy thing you're gonna. I'm at the club 6 nights a week. Gambling, sports betting,
women,
blackjack's kind of my Jones. Believe it or not, I wasn't even out here chasing women. I was in the party scene and in the gambling scene so much that's what I did every day until I got so tired. I was like, I'm just going to bed. And then I would wake up, sign forgeries all day long, start drinking at about 8 o'clock again. And this is coming from someone, I've never used a drug a day in my life, never been high, weed, nothing but alcohol, partying, gambling. I was there, and it was an everyday thing. Every day was the same. Run eBay till about 8 o'clock, start drinking, hit the club, get home when the sun's out, sleep for a couple hours, do it again.
So you had mentioned that baseball was pretty much in the past, but when I was doing some background, you were really you played for the White Sands in the Pecos League. When was that? Was that during all this?
Yeah, so my rookie season with Sussex that we mentioned, that's like the 1 year of like high level professional baseball I played. That was 2008.
Okay.
I basically missed all of 2009 because of the surgery. I played in an instructional league in Georgia in 2010. 2011 I missed because of a knee injury. And 2012, I go in, I'm trying to kind of revitalize my career. I'm in good shape. I know my shoulder's still mangled and a mess. But I go to a spring league in Houston, Texas, the Pecos Spring League, which is pay to play. So another, professional baseball money-making scam, which is pretty much what all my.
So did you move to Houston then for a while?
Right. So not only did I move to Houston, I took 2 of my associates with me.
Oh, okay.
Because now at this point in time, 2012, the operation is so deep and so many people are involved, and so many people that have no other income. This is their only income. They're paying mortgages, they're paying car payments, they're paying utilities, they're living off of Operation Stolen Base. So when I go to leave for the summer, they come with me. To backtrack a little bit, a funny story is when I'm in this instructional league in Georgia, in Macon, Georgia. And we're playing. It's not a ton of fans, but we're playing in front of 500,000 fans a night. And they put us up in a college dorm room. There was a point in time where I was so pressed for money in the middle of this summer while I'm playing in front of fans, not getting a paycheck, that I had to sell some forgeries out of my college dorm room. My teammate knew about it because he's sitting there just to pay to live, just to survive, to go eat. Because I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. They didn't feed us. They just gave us a place to stay. And that happened there. That happened in the Pecos League. So once I came out of the spring league, I got signed by a team in the Pecos League, White Sands Pupfish. I'm supposed to get paid $50 a week. Yeah, I know.
So you went from $800 to $200 a month.
Yeah, $50 a week. But at least the $800, they paid travel expenses. They gave you meals, equipment. Pecos League, nothing. $200 a month, $50 a week, no food. I didn't have a place to stay. I'm paying $40 a night for my hotel while only making $50 a week. And I also never got my $50 paychecks. I never got paid. So allegedly I'm supposed to get $50 a week.
That should be Operation Stolen Base.
Yeah, but I don't even get that. So to survive, again, I'm in a hotel room by myself, pulling out the pen, baseball, selling forgeries in between games. We're playing 13 games in 14 days. I'm at the field from basically noon till 11 o'clock at night, get home, run the operation just to survive. And now, again, that's not to make an excuse for, how I went about things, but, you mentioned that should be Operation Stolen Base. It really is. Some of these low level professional leagues and independent leagues and the tryouts that guys get signed out of. For instance, like the tryout I said I got signed out of, 2 guys out of 200 got contracts. The tryout cost $200. They gave out 2 contracts. They made $40,000 in 2 days. I'm sorry, more than that. 200 position players, 200 pitchers as well. They made $80,000 in 2 days. But these organizations just thrive off of, back against the wall, last chance, your family's on you, or, family supports the college kid trying to live out their dream. And, it's really a financial burden. Nobody makes their money back from playing professional baseball unless you make it all the way. There is no money in low-level professional baseball anywhere.
Did this ever happen? I mean, as a professional baseball player, kids want autographs of players. They don't care who they are. So when a kid would ask you for your autograph, did you have to stop and think about how to sign your own damn name?
I mean, it's funny because I think this is in the Sports Illustrated article too. My first real introduction to signing my autograph is we have a firework night in Sussex. There's probably 6,000-7,000 fans, and all the veterans. I'm new here. I'm just here first couple weeks. All the veterans know what it is. They're on the field, off the field, in the clubhouse. They want to get to the spread, the food, because once the food's gone, it's gone. And all the rookies are standing on the rail signing autographs. And I distinctly remember if you looked at my signature, the first one I signed for a little kid and the last one I signed before I went in, it doesn't even look the same, right? Because by the end, it's just probably a C and a line, and I'm trying to get to some food,
right?
Because again, we're making $800 a month. I need my free meal before I leave the clubhouse. But to me, and this is probably part of why I didn't take it as serious as it is from a legality standpoint, is the thought of an autograph is kind of nonsensical to me, right? If I met somebody professional player that I admired or idolized or respected, I'm going to ask him for a handshake and a picture with him. I don't care about having a baseball that I see touched a pen to.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to me that the pen you have in your hand right now, if you put it in LeBron James' hand, it's valuable. If you put it in my hand, it's illegal and not. So the legality standpoint of it to me is kind of, and the collectability of it, it's also kind of crazy. But that's all based on value and stuff like that, resale market.
At the height of this whole Operation Stolen Base, how many phones were you operating?
Oh God. Geez. So
do you have an approximate number?
So I had 3 operational smartphones,
okay,
which would be, my personal phone, a phone I used for, wireless internet, Wi-Fi, MiFi, whatever they called it back then, a wireless hotspot that I could change the IP address on. Another phone I contacted guys with, but then each individual eBay account had a track phone attached to it. So they each had to have their own operational phone number. And the operation as a whole, not just myself, the operation as a whole probably burned through a couple hundred eBay accounts. And every eBay account
had a phone.
Every eBay account had a PayPal account. Every eBay account had a checking account. So, we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of checking accounts and phones and prepaid debit cards, because that had to go on there too. It's a whole. I honestly thought I was in more of danger getting in trouble for all the phone lines and registering them under fake names and fake phone numbers and fake debit cards and all that. It turned out, like, obviously never imagined I was getting charged with racketeering for forgery. So
tell me and my listeners then, how does 2 addicts getting pulled over on October 11th, 2013 with gift cards from Walmart and Home Depot lead to an investigation to you?
So there's really 2 things that happen, neither one of which I'm even involved in. And obviously, as I previously mentioned, I've never used drugs, never been high, anything like that. So it's kind of a funny story now on the back end that it's drug addicted behavior that leads to the downfall of a multi-million-dollar operation. So one of my associates, unbeknownst to me, he becomes so addicted to pain pills and opioids that the baseballs we're selling on eBay for roughly $40, $50, $60. They're $2 baseballs from Walmart. You can go to Walmart and buy them right now, $2. Instead of going and buying them, he sends another one of his associates who's also addicted to pain pills into Walmart to steal them.
Oh, $2 baseball.
$2 baseballs. I mean, but he's trying to steal 200 baseballs or whatever. He gets caught. He points the finger back at my associate. Why are you stealing all the baseballs? It's because he's signing forgeries on them, selling them on eBay. So that's kind of the first domino to fall. But that doesn't put eyes on me. That puts eyes on my associate, Craig McCormick. So it starts with him. The incident you're talking about is my misstep, I guess. Is that, and as we get into the gambling, I also ran an underground poker game out of my house.
At the same time, which again, legally, So instead of going to casinos, we'll just stay home and gamble and play cards.
This is before gambling was legalized in Ohio, and closest would have been Pittsburgh or West Virginia, and the underground poker game circuit in Youngstown was massive. And it's funny, I tell stories. There were nights there was more money on my table in my basement than my house was worth. Which is serious. But the poker game I ran was a collection of a couple drug dealers, couple mobbed up construction owners, some old school mob guys, couple doctors. Like, it was
guys with thick pockets.
Yeah, and a pretty random collection of guys that you would never see in the same room unless they're gambling together.
Right.
So how it all comes to fruition is one of the drug dealers actually owes me about $900 from the game. I'm sorry, $600 from the game. I know he's good for it. No big deal. He comes over the next day. Yeah, I got the $600 for you, or do you want these 2 Walmart gift cards? Like, well, give me the Walmart gift cards for $1,000 because I'm going to buy baseballs, footballs, basketballs anyway. And I know basically where he's getting them. He's buying them off Craigslist. And, I don't really think much further than that. As it turns out, this is where all the dots connect, is these two drug addicts get pulled over with stolen credit cards. The stolen credit cards trace to the gift cards. The gift card traces to me at Walmart, buggies full of baseballs. But the time where they get pulled over, I'm already out of Dodge. I moved to Las Vegas in October 2013. So while there's an investigation going on, whether it's the local authorities or the FBI based around Craig McCormick, I'm in the wind. I'm gone. I don't even know the investigation's going on, but I'm gone.
Did you know they were investigating the eBay accounts?
No,
I didn't know.
I didn't know there was an investigation going on. It just so happens that at that time period, I leave.
Okay.
Which puts obviously a wrinkle in their whole operation. And, they know something's going on, but they don't know my name. They don't know who it is, nothing. But now they trace these credit cards to the gift cards to Walmart surveillance. Boom. Now they have a name, my license plate, my name. They know who I am. And that's what puts me under surveillance and investigation. Again, I didn't even find out that that's how the investigation happened until they raid my house. I'm charged. I get my discovery. And like the first 5,000 pages of discovery are the case file of April and John Blosser, who were the two that got pulled over for a cracked front windshield with the stolen credit cards. I thought they sent me the wrong discovery packet. I'm like, this is a joke. I don't even know what this is. And lo and behold, that's how they connect the dots. And what's crazy from a legality standpoint is April and John Blosser actually never got charged with anything. They never got charged with the stolen credit cards. I did. They put them in my operation, in my RICO operation, as working for me, that I paid them to go out and break into cars and steal credit cards. And there's actually a funny dialect somewhere on the audio between me and the prosecutor once I plead guilty. I'm pretty much like, Marty, I'm printing money out of my bedroom. Why would I hire some drug addicts to go steal credit cards? It doesn't even make sense.
Is it true that the investigators were pulling your trash?
They did.
They did.
Yes.
What were they looking for?
So what they pulled from it is pretty much like my trash paper with signatures on it where I might have practiced something, or certificates of authenticity. They also needed to verify my address was what it was. And that happened out here in Henderson, Nevada. But again, all that is, they used that crime, the stolen credit cards, to get jurisdiction of the case, because that's actually the only part of the crime that happened entirely in Mahoning County. And I don't know how deep we're going to get into the legal aspect of it. There's a lot of
we'll get into some of it here.
There's a lot of nonsense that went on. Not to say I'm innocent, because I'm not, but that doesn't mean I don't have rights and kind of what they did. And it's no coincidence that my FBI agent is no longer an agent. My detective is no longer a detective, and my prosecutor is no longer a prosecutor. They've all been fired. So, not directly related to my case, but directly related to similar type conduct.
December 1st, 2014, you open the door. What happens?
Awesome day that was. Awesome day that was. So actually, not funny, but a little side note is I was kind of having a little dispute with my neighbor at the time, and they had called the cops on me previously for basically having a vehicle parked out front that hadn't moved for a couple of days, and you kind of know how that is out here in HOA and whatever. So it's about 8 a.m. and my roommate comes running upstairs. The cops are at the door, and in my mind, it's just my dumbass neighbor again causing some problem. And at this point in time, I'm self-aware enough that it's not my neighbor causing the problem. It's me being a young, arrogant, idiot kid playing music and partying and all that. But I go to the door with that intent that it's some nonsense I got to deal with. And I open the door and I see the big FBI letters, and there's about 12 of them. And I'm like, shit, this is it. This is it. I already know what's going on. So,
but they raided your house, but they didn't arrest you.
They did not have an arrest warrant. They had a search warrant.
Okay.
And it's funny when they conduct the search warrant, they're conducting a search warrant at my parents' house at the same time, and also multiple search warrants back in Ohio. But the detective, who's from Canfield, Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio, calls the prosecutor, which this is not protocol, I don't believe, and is like, well, what do you want us to take? And the prosecutor says, take everything. They called it fruits of illegal activity, and they took everything I owned. They left me a pair of flip-flops, a pair of shorts, and a t-shirt. Took everything I owned. It took everything my mom owned. My dad wasn't on the search warrant. Neither was my grandmother. They lived in another residence. But they took stuff from my parents, like even though he wasn't on the search warrant, they took my dad's clothes. They seized my dad's bank accounts. They took my grandmother's hearing aids, debit cards, credit cards, my dad's medical records. Like whatever they could take at that moment to start putting pressure on me to plead guilty is what they did. And that's really the legal side of it is, what they did for 2 years to make me plead guilty. And again, for the listeners, it's not that I'm innocent. I'm not innocent. But when you look at the fact that I have 8 felonies, including a first-degree racketeering charge, let's get serious.
Yeah, let's talk about a racketeering charge like the RICO Act. You normally hear about that with organized crime and the mafia. You don't hear about that for somebody who's signing and forging footballs, basketballs, and baseballs. But they get you under a RICO Act with 22 indictments that included corrupt activity, aggravated theft, telecommunications fraud, forgery, identity fraud, and money laundering. I mean, okay, some of it is against the law, but this seems a little excessive to me when I'm reading it.
So an interesting quote in another, project podcasting I have going on where the detective and the prosecutor both interview, they make the claim, this is like their little claim to fame for their career, is that this was the biggest organized crime case in the history of Mahoning County, which, you having some mob-based knowledge and background, there's plenty of mob and mafia ties to Youngstown, and there's been federal indictments and serious racketeering cases. And because of the alleged amount of victims, which they say is 25,000, which, no one really knows, including them, including me. We don't, there's never been a victim named on the record. But that's like their claim to fame is they claim it's the biggest organized crime case in the history of Mahoning County, which again is illogical. And when you read down that list of charges, the identity theft is actually the stolen credit cards.
Oh.
That's a felony, a second-degree felony that I have on my record indefinitely, forever, is stolen credit cards, which I had nothing to do with. And again, not that I'm innocent at all, but I know what I did, and that was the huge holdup in the plea negotiations and coming to a resolution. Is, like I said, the feds dropped the case. The detectives out here kind of laughed it off like this is a joke, which it's more serious than that. The feds dropped the case because their problem was because I sold authentic merchandise throughout the duration, at least in some capacity, the feds didn't know what was what. And to me, the feds play a little bit more by the rules than the state. And they would have had to go in and been like, this is fake, this is real, this is fake. Ohio instead chose to throw a blanket over the whole operation. It's all fake and charge me for all of it. So with my racketeering charge and my aggravated theft, I really was forced into pleading guilty for some sales that were authentic because they just grouped it all together, said it's all fake. And that's because they couldn't prove what is what. And that was really the holdup we had in plea negotiations was, hey, I want to plead guilty to what I'm actually guilty for. And they're like, well, we want you to plead guilty for racketeering.
Here's something that might be a little weird question, but you said you had multiple eBay accounts.
Hundreds.
Okay, hundreds. And they charge fees when you sell stuff. So what happened to all those fees?
Yeah, eBay kept their roughly $400,000. Yeah.
Okay, so absolutely. Nothing happened. They just got to keep that money.
Yeah. So what I heard, through the grapevines, as you want to call it, from some of the attorneys that were on the case, is that a big problem with their case was once eBay realized how big this was and how big of kind of a mess it was, they quit cooperating.
Oh.
So that's why there's no victims on record. And I always say there's no victims, but obviously there's victims, but there's no on record victims. There's no names. There's no, Joe Smith bought X item on X date for $50. There's none of that. There's no victims. And that's because eBay shut it down. And, you know, they could have went through the process and I'm sure got subpoenas, but now you're talking, you know, hundreds of different eBay accounts. And the only way to get to them is through the back door, which is going from a checking account to the PayPal account, to the eBay account, to the item. And again, what they were going to find wasn't even going to tell the narrative of what they wanted to tell. Again, they wanted to tell the story that every item I sold was illegitimate, fake. And, you know, what's funny, and again, it's not to say I didn't sell forgeries, because I did. There's more proof in their own discovery that I sold authentic merchandise than there is actually proof that I sold forgeries. That's not to say there weren't numerous more forgeries than authentic, but like on record proof, there's more proof that I sold authentic stuff. You know, they have the videos from the Alabama players signing. They have the pictures from the Super Bowl. A funny tidbit side note is that when the prosecutor submits my sentencing memorandum, they submit an appendix with all the pictures of the merchandise and the raid and the warehouse and everything. And they submit, this is how unknowledgeable they actually are, is some of the autographs that they picture are real. So in my sentencing memorandum, they're picturing authentic autographs to get me sentenced to what ends up being not only the longest sentence in U.S. history for sports memorabilia fraud, it's double. So there was a previous case, and I don't know how much you know about it or got into it, Operation Bullpen, which is like the first federal big case for sports memorabilia forgery. And that was like $100 million spread across the entire country, and the ringleader got 2.5 years.
Wow.
I do 6 every day with no early release, no eligibility for early release, day for day, 6 years.
And you're in Ohio.
You're
in Ohio in prison. How does Sports Illustrated come into this picture? How do they contact you? Do they come visit you? How do you get word? Do they want to do a story?
Yeah, so the whole Sports Illustrated thing, and it's really a poorly written article that I don't really agree with. It was kind of one-sided, but he reaches out a couple days before I get sentenced, and I do the interview in a local restaurant in Youngstown the day before I get sentenced. So at this point in time, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how long I'm getting sentenced for, right? So I pled guilty to what ended up being a 3 to 7 year plea deal. And with no previous criminal record, college educated, showed up to all my appearances. You know, me and my attorney really think I'm getting 3 or 4, which is obviously not what happens. I get 6 years, which in the state of Ohio is a huge difference. If I were to get 3 or 4 years, I would have been eligible for release after 6 months. Because I went over the 5-year threshold, it becomes day for day, 6 years. I serve every day of it. But what the Sports Illustrated article did for me is, and anyone that's, you know, knows about prison or what, you know, paperwork check and guys getting their paperwork check to see what they're in for, that became my paperwork. So I started my prison sentence April of 2017. The article came out October of 2017. And in state prison, which arguably I shouldn't have been in. I should have been in federal white-collar prison. But in state prison, it's a lot of low-level drug offenders, drug dealers. And now I'm the guy in Sports Illustrated that ran the multi-million-dollar scheme. And, you know, not to sound proud of the crime, because I'm not, but, you know, when in Rome. In Rome. So in that environment, that did a lot of good for me credibility-wise. I'm that guy now, and that really carries me through my prison sentence.
Is that how you become the bookie?
That's a big part of it. That's funny you say. That's a big part of it. So, you know, as we talked a little bit off, you know, recording, I ran what became really the biggest sports betting operation in the state of Ohio prison system. And sports betting, you know, they call it running tickets, is a huge deal in prison because it's really just a way to pass the time, but it's also very, very lucrative. And people would think on the outside, like as a white guy in prison, where in Ohio, you know, it's, I would have been the minority, and unaffiliated, not gang affiliated. It would have been hard for me to pull something like that off. But a lot of it goes back to my credibility being in Sports Illustrated. I was that guy. I rubbed elbows with the right people in prison because of that, because they're, you know, they say, what do you learn in prison? You learn how to become a better criminal. Well, that's not what I was on. You know, I had enough after about 6 months. I knew I wasn't going back. But other guys there, you know, they still have that mindset, and, you know, so they're gravitating towards me, how'd I do it, what I do. You know, they want the Vegas stories. You know, most people in Ohio are, you know, confined to Ohio living, and, you know, they want all the stories and the nightlife and the Vegas partying and the gambling. And like I said, it does me a lot of good in that regard. It gives me the credibility.
And before you get to freedom, they transition you to a halfway house. Cliff, tell me and my listeners the story about you're doing laps in the mall and you see security guards.
Yeah, so in Ohio, they actually, you know, people don't understand that, you know, they think of a halfway house as like you're going to a drug rehab or sober living. In Ohio, they call it transitional control. Everybody goes for 6 months. They make you go, and that's just another financial aspect of the prison system, because I'm at a halfway house that is privately owned, huge corporation, 8 buildings, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of inmates. You know, they're taking 25% of your gross paycheck, and, you know, it's huge business. But it's actually, that was the worst time of my prison sentence. Being in the halfway house was worse than prison. I had less freedom. You know, it's a secure facility, buzzed in, buzzed out. And I got to go to work, and, well, not even got to, they make you go to work. So I had to work a minimum wage job, that I didn't need. I was already like established out here in Nevada. But there's a lot of restrictions, and the only thing that made it okay was that my bosses kind of knew I wasn't on any kind of nonsense. And so they would schedule me for 8 hours, let me work 4, and let me just go leave. And a lot of what I did for my transition was I would just go to the mall and just walk around. I just wanted to be in society, be in public, talk to people, just, you know, transition into being normal. But one of the rules of the halfway house is you're not allowed in a mall, a gym, a park, like all sorts of restrictions. So I'm walking and I see security guards walking towards me, and instantly I'm like, I'm going back to prison. Like, I didn't do anything. I'm just walking laps, and they're just mall security. But that's part of the PTSD, you know, from prison, which is a real thing. And it's not as bad anymore, but I promise you, if I hear a knock on my door at 7 a.m, like, I'm startled and like looking out the window and, you know, ready to jump the wall, and I'm not even doing anything. So
right.
That's just kind of the residual effect that always, I don't know if it'll ever go away.
You developed iconic clothing brand, iconicbrandclothing.com. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. It's turning cons into icons. Did you come up with this idea after you got out or while you were in?
So, you know, really the whole social media scene changed a lot in my 6 years.
I'm sure, yeah.
Right? And the halfway house did do good for me in that regard. That's where I got on social media, Instagram, TikTok. My TikTok is Life After Prison. And that was a very positive thing. And as I started telling my story and started gaining traction, you know, I really start to become very much self-aware of how important my story is for younger athletes. You know, it's a very cautionary tale to me, to younger athletes, is, you know, where did I kind of come off the tracks is I lost my career. So I was really identified as a ball player my entire life. I lose my career, you know, outside of things I can control, doing an injury, and I just made some very poor decisions after that. So it's that cautionary tale, but then, you know, and really what the brand stems off of is, you know, there's a lot of intelligent, hardworking, trustworthy, loyal, and talented people that come out of prison, and society just discredits them because they carry a felon moniker on their name. And that's what the brand is to me, is that, you know, just because I have a felon moniker attached to my name doesn't mean I'm going to sell myself short. I'm going to set the bar low. I'm not going to have big goals, dreams, and aspirations. And the brand has gained a lot of traction because, you know, other guys in my situation are proud to wear it. And because they do have, you know, they also have big goals and aspirations. And what's crazy to me in society is, you know, I find it a lot easier to deal with people in my situation than normal people in society that haven't faced adversity. You know, of course, there's bad apples. There's people that don't want to change their lives. There's guys that don't want to get clean, sober, live a rehabilitated life. But the guys that have made that decision that they want to live legitimately, they're going to be the most loyal, trustworthy, hardworking people you're going to find. And that's, society could benefit from that. And a lot of times these guys don't get these opportunities. And that's what the brand's about to me.
Let me take that one step further so you can explain this to the listeners. Who is Cliff Panezich today?
Who is Cliff Panezich today? I think going into prison, I didn't have a purpose. My purpose in life was I was an athlete.
Okay.
I lost that purpose, and that's kind of where I go off the rails. Going to prison, seeing what the criminal justice system is like, gave me purpose again, which is, one, using my story to educate, but also, there's so much negativity in society directed towards felons that I'm willing to put myself out there, and I just kind of wear the negativity, make jokes about it, laugh it off, to show other people that that's okay. You don't have to listen to, all the negative stuff coming from society. So to me, I run an e-commerce business. I have a partnership with a liquidation company out here. I pretty much try and help everyone. I employ people that are in the same situation as me, former felons. I'm working on a deal with a barber to get guys coming out haircuts for free when they need it, clothing to, go to job interviews. And unfortunately, a lot of these stories don't become public because a lot of the guys don't want their personal stories out there. And if you go to my social media, you see all the negative comments that I kind of respond to and make jokes about. But it's the direct messages that are super positive. And I'll never out anybody that doesn't want their story out there. But it's all the time I get the messages that, your story is inspiring and you inspired me to do this, or, I'd love to have a shirt and represent the brand. And there's a lot of that. And that's really what pushes me to put myself out there and tell my story and not hold back and not be ashamed of it. And what I always say is, some of the people on social media be like, you talk about your story as if you're proud of what you did. And I say, the only people ashamed of their past are people not confident in their present. I'm not proud of my past. I'm not proud of what put me in prison, but I'm proud of where I'm at now, where I'm going, what do I want to accomplish. And that's why it's easy to talk about.
Where can listeners follow you at? Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube?
Yeah, so TikTok is Life After Prison. Instagram is at @Panezich. Just like my name, anyone can find me on Facebook, Cliff Panezich. And again, the brand is iconicbrandclothing.com.
I'm going to put links in the show notes to the Iconic brand, to your TikTok, and to your Instagram. So listeners, you can go right there and click and follow Cliff. Thanks for coming to Dom DeMarco's and talking a little bit about your story, your past. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on.
You bet. Anytime. Listeners, that's going to do it for this episode of Before the Lights. But before we go, I need you to do me a favor. This is going to take you 30 seconds. I need you to rate and review my show. 5 stars. Nice comments are always appreciated. Literally, it's going to take you 30 seconds. It takes you 2 seconds to click 5 stars and just a few more seconds to type in a couple of words. I'm really going to appreciate it. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm Tommy Canale. And until next time, everybody, I salute a chin chin.